Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Let's Talk Bible podcast. My name is Misael, and this is actually a part 2 to the video on loving yourself because my good friend Genesis commented a couple questions that I thought were very important and that I should have touched on, but of course I didn't, or I might have touched on in the video that was never posted on the same topic. So let's get right into it.
Welcome to the Let's Talk Bible podcast, the podcast about anything related to God, religion, and of course, the Bible.
Please remember that this conversation is strictly academic and aims to enrich our knowledge about the people and events in the Bible. However, we also welcome any questions regarding our faith as members of the International Light of the World Church.
So the question she asked in the comment was, what was my thought process behind making a video like this, or like that first part? And then she also asked me for some examples on what it means to love one's self non-biblically. So I'll start with the first part, the thought process. When we tend to describe love, I feel in our very kind of nowadays language, we use words that kind of make it seem like it's something that just happens to us, right? We fall into love and we fall out of love. And it's something that sounds like we don't have very much control over. So one of the reasons that I brought it up the way that I did in dividing oneself and the way we view others into three distinct parts, into seeing our past, present, and future as distinct individuals, was because I think we have a lot more control over it than we sometimes think we do. So if I look at my past, the past version of me, and I'll use myself as an example, I was very disappointed at the end of the year and the beginning of this year with the lack of work that I put forth into the projects that I had planned. And so I could dwell on it, and just be like, oh, well, I never get things done. I'm an eternal procrastinator, and I'll look into not being a procrastinator anymore tomorrow. And I could just be upset with myself and so disappointed in myself because I let myself down that I'm not going to be productive. So that's what I meant by coming to terms with the version that I was, seeing myself as a distinct individual and knowing that the person who let me down is not me, but the person I was, right? My past version let me down, but there's no reason for me to just suffer the consequences. I do live with the consequences because, like I said in that video, I have to now start working harder to either make up time or try and catch up on the work that I wanted to do. But I don't have to just settle with what happened. And so in loving myself and understand that I can be these distinct individuals, then I forgive my past. Okay, that's done. But I choose to look at it that way. And then I'm selfless presently because I'm not going to indulge myself. I'm not going to live a lustful life towards myself and just follow the pleasures of my flesh and do whatever I want in the moment, because I also have to keep in mind that I have a future self, and I tend to think of that future self kind of like as a baby who's not here yet. And this might seem a little weird, but, can't speak for himself. My future self can't speak for himself, can't defend himself, but he will also have to live with the consequences of what I choose to do now. And so that's all personal, right? These coming to terms with my past, the being selfless with my present because of my future. And so that's all very personal. But I also think that we have a lot more control than we might think that we do when it comes to loving others. And I know I kind of cut this part out, but in one of the recordings of that previous video, I mentioned my kids a lot more. And I talk about how I want them to succeed. And so I'm very loving towards them and their future version as well. And that's something that I decide to do. If I choose to sit down with my daughter or sit down with my son and talk to them and make sure that they're feeling okay, I'm not just doing it to try and make them feel better at the moment, because they don't know a lot of the problems that they might encounter in the future. But things like teaching your kids lessons and investing time in them, it's because we want it to pay off in the future. We want their future to be successful, so we're willing to invest the time in their present. And so that's something that we choose to do. But when we don't think about it this way, even towards our kids, we can be very selfish, because instead of giving and preparing for them an actual meal or taking the time to talk to them about an issue, and instead of trying to resolve the root problem, we kind of are just like, oh, well, here, fill up on candy, or just do this and don't bother me right now. That's very selfish, right? And it's, again, it's a choice. So it comes more natural for us to invest into our kids. We also have this exact same degree of choice when we choose to love our spouses. And I'm going to reference the Pray Girl Q&A again here, because in that video I mentioned the fact that there are families who have become estranged, siblings that don't talk to each other, or parent and children relationships that aren't working. But when one decides to reach out and build that relationship back up, it works, even if years have gone by. And it's not a blood thing, because it's not a physical thing. It's when we decide to work and to reinvest ourselves in the life of somebody else, we do so because we care about them. Also in that video, somebody asked about falling out of love. And I want people to know that they have control over falling into and falling out of love. If you're falling out of love with somebody, I think it's because you are not invested in their future. Like I said in part 1 of this video, who cares about their feelings? Who cares about their emotional state? Who cares about all of the things that they might be going through? Because you don't care about their future version. You're not invested in them. And so if you stop caring about somebody's future, then there's no reason that love, I think, begins to dwindle, because it has a reverse domino effect. You stop caring about their future, and so you don't care how you treat their present, and then their past, well, that's already happened, so who cares about that? And so this was my thought process. I've always understood that God's love is a choice by God, because Jesus Christ, he didn't know us when he gave his life for us, but he chose to love us, not because we had done anything for him, but because he wanted to love us. And so if we are to live in God's love and understand God's love, and so we also have to understand love this way, that we have control over who we love. And so if we want to love somebody, we'll work with their present self, and we'll figure out our future together. And this could be something as simple as a friendship to as great as a lifelong partnership, like marriage is supposed to be. So I guess my point with all of that was that it's not something that just happens to us and we fall into and out of, but it's something that we have a lot of control over. So what are some examples of loving non-biblically? I think it's when you love somebody, but only an aspect of them, only one version of them. Because biblically encompasses the past, present, and future at all times. I have to always be aware of somebody's present and their future. That's why I said the distinction between love and lust, I feel, is as simple as lust cares only for the present, love cares about the future as well. So one example of loving non-biblically, in my opinion, would be when somebody says they fell in love with someone else. People change, everyone changes, hopefully for the better. And God always encourages us to strive to become better. But I think that we all know of examples where somebody fell in love with a version of someone, and then that person begins to change, and then we wish they were the person they used to be, because in our mind, and our memories tend to become distorted over time, but that's besides the point. Because in our mind, the person we fell in love with was so different and so ideal and so perfect that, wow, who did you become? Something like that. I think that would be non-biblical love. And then another example of non-biblical love would be to love somebody but only their present. And that's, again, what I would consider lust is. So you only care about enjoying that person in the moment, and you only want to be with them, and you don't care the consequences. And this next part may not apply to everyone, because these videos are certainly not only for my brothers and sisters in the Lord, but also when we're reckless in the way that we pursue somebody. If we're very aggressive to the point of stalking somebody, you're not caring for their psychological well-being. You're not caring about your own relationship and what it will look like in the future. All of that lust-driven attitude and actions, I think that is non-biblical love. Or I think that you can also fall in love with somebody's future. And what I mean by that is that everybody has potential. Everybody aspires to be somebody, and we sometimes reflect that in the way we express ourselves. Like, I know for a fact that one of the things that attracted my wife to me was that we both had very similar aspirations of becoming missionaries. And so we both fell in love with each other, or at least I fell in love with her, because I knew that we had very similar goals. But if one of us starts falling behind on one of those goals, that could also be kind of like this is not the person I married. We can begin to complain because we feel that the other person has conformed to their current state or has stopped striving to be better and all of that. And so that, again, in my opinion, is non-biblical love. When we forget that somebody is continuously striving or is still trying to get to the place where they want to be. I'm sorry about these bright lights, by the way. But if we're holding somebody presently accountable for the potential I feel they have in my mind, I think that is stepping out of bounds again and not loving in the way God loved us. So I say loving biblically, but what I kind of also mean is God's love. And this is the example that Jesus showed us regarding God's love. He loved us before he knew us. He still loves us, though many of us have not lived up to our potential either. And that's the way we ought to love one another as well. I hope all of this made sense. So just to summarize, my thought process for this video was to try and give you back the power of your love. It's a beautiful thing to aspire to have control over the way we love each other, and to try and always do so under God's direction. So I think that's the end of the video because I'm home. So I hope that you'll join us in the discussion, whether it's through the comments here, whether it's through Gmail, which you can find in the description, or our website, talkbiblepod.com. I really enjoyed talking about this and thinking about this all day long. And so I hope this video kind of clears up some stuff that I might not have discussed in detail. But yeah, I appreciate this, and stay tuned for more content. Till next time, God bless you.